institutions are not going to be like heavily investing in these things, right? So it brings us back to that idea that, okay, well, they probably, if we get a spot ETF, they probably would start to heavily invest in Bitcoin, which goes with the whole dominant side of things as well. So I think that's just something that investors, they get so excited, and I don't blame them. I mean, that move on Ripple was incredible. Although, to be honest, I thought it would go more, maybe because it wasn't a full win and there's the appeal process. But for me, it's still this kind of pseudo gray now, with maybe a little bit more clarity, but not enough to really release the Kraken, as they say.
This video features Gareth Soloway, president of Verified Investing, as he offers his analysis of the overall crypto market, the dominance of Bitcoin, and his position on the US dollarization and how it affects the crypto and broader financial system. It is no longer news that the crypto world is gearing up for a very big rally. Binance, a cryptocurrency exchange, declared that the integration of Bitcoin on the Lightning Network was finished. Users of Binance will be able to use the scaling solution for Bitcoin deposits and withdrawals as a result of the shift. Users will also have the alternative of Bitcoin Lightning when depositing Bitcoin, in addition to the regular options of Bitcoin, BEP20, stated WIT, and others. With the most recent integration, Binance has joined other well-known companies like Kraken, OKX, Bitfinex, and River Financial in embracing the Layer 2 scaling solution. Binance first announced its plans to incorporate the Lightning Network in May, after the temporary suspension of Bitcoin withdrawals was brought on by a rush in pending transactions, brought on by the sharp increase in Bitcoin network gas prices. According to a recent analysis by Valkyrie Investments, the Lightning Network mobile payment application Strike's activities are largely responsible for the adoption of the network's technology in emerging markets like South America and Africa. While this is going on, Lightning Labs, the firm that created the Lightning Network, just unveiled a new toolset that helps AI programs like OpenAI's ChatGPT communicate with the Bitcoin network in order to transfer, receive, and hold the cryptocurrency. Don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe, and leave your comments below as we move through the video.
Even though I believed that Bitcoin dominance was ultimately going to head higher, there was opportunities for kind of a snapback on some of the altcoins. And so for instance, I had members at Verified Investing Crypto. We were long Cardano with this beautiful little wedge, and then as it popped into this area, that's where we started to unload, right? So it's the swing trade ability to kind of just be in and be out and understand the bigger macro picture. But you can see what's happened. I mean, Cardano's come right back in. Now, interestingly enough, what this does for me, at least, is this potentially brings up a opportunity here. And I'm just looking for some chart things here. So for me, this now becomes, let me do it again here. This becomes support right here, right? So you have this trend line and this trend line, which were this was former resistance. When resistance breaks, it now becomes support. And so for me, and this is again strictly on a swing trade basis, I would potentially be interested in unloading buying Cardano again back at around 29 cents, give or take. And the same thing for Matic, right? I mean, these things were quick poppers. Now it's retracing. So now you have some opportunities on the way back down where you can play. But again, I think it's important to just caveat this for everyone watching, that we're not at least I'm not talking about long-term holds. These are make 10%, 15%, be out of the type of trading opportunities.
You don't know what the news is going to be that's going to associate itself with the price action, but it nevertheless usually comes.
And I do want to just point out too, is that just with Bitcoin dominance going up, again, just to reiterate, it doesn't necessarily guarantee Bitcoin's going to go up from here, right? So Bitcoin could drop 20%, alts could drop 40%, right? And then dominance still goes up in that situation. So just to be aware, and the only reason I bring this up too is if I just flip to my chart, is that there's been some, even though we're still technically stuck in a sideways consolidation, which is usually bullish for Bitcoin, I'm struggling with some factors here, right? So we keep on making these attempts and making even slightly higher highs, and then something's causing Bitcoin to kind of reverse super quickly. Like this candle right here technically fits a topping tail, and topping tail in technical analysis is a bearish indicator. Here we had this beautiful close. It was like the first close or the highest close we've seen. And the next day, Bitcoin fell right back down, negating that entire move up, which again is not confidence building. It's not a good signal for Bitcoin, and then we've just gone sideways. And you can see, actually, I put in a channel now. There's a pretty clear sideways upsloping channel that's kind of keeping price in this range. So I think, just from my perspective, is that you have to admit that this sideways chop after a move up is usually bullish, but it's not been an easy success breakout situation for Bitcoin. And I do wonder at some point, if this thing can't break out, path of least resistance is to the downside. And where's the big money, right? And the big money is not going to be, I mean, you got a spot ETF, which is going to draw, think about it like a magnet. The spot ETF basically has to be approved by the SEC, which is going to give semi-green light to Bitcoin for institutions. They're not getting that green light with altcoins at this point. Doesn't mean it won't happen in a few years, but as of now, it certainly does seem like that's the place to be. So I want to touch base on something that I've been looking at here, which is the US dollar, and get your views on this. So we've seen a pretty impressive breakdown just in the last week on the US dollar. And according to me, according to what I'm seeing, I do see some support coming in here, but everything I'm seeing is pointing to eventually further downside in the US dollar. I'm looking at more for, the potential for the weakness in the US dollar that could drag on for years. And again, there's the difference between short term versus long term. But for me, it's like, you look at the US debt now, 32 trillion, and I think I was reading that 800 billion a year is just going to pay interest, right? And so the question becomes, how does the US get out of this? There was actually a chart I was just looking at in tax payments. Tax revenue for the government is now falling off a cliff to the downside, which means it's even harder, which ultimately leads to, well, how do you pay it if your revenue's going down, your debt is going up, your interest payments are going up? There's not a lot of options. Either you raise taxes, which isn't going to fly with the government the way it is, or you print money, right? So that kind of breeds, and again, this is more of a 1 to 2 year outlook, maybe potentially not like the next 6 months. But I think that's kind of where I am, and you're right, if we get in a situation where China does invade Taiwan, the dollar is going to spike on that. It's still the safe haven for the globe. But barring those type of scenarios, you got to think at least that it could head down. It's kind of part of the bull case for me on gold as well. That it's going to be interesting to see. I mean, I'm super intrigued by the next 6 to 12 months in terms of what markets do. I mean, we're now looking at, and just to bring people up to speed on some of the things I've been following, the Chinese reported major economic data yesterday. It was all atrocious. And the thing is, when they report a miss, in general, I always so if they report like 5% GDP, I'm always like, okay, it was probably like 3%. They always like to overestimate, right? So the fact is they're reporting misses below expectations. It's probably even worse. And what's fascinating about the China situation is that we actually have a scenario where they came out of their lockdown and you did see a quick push, but it didn't last the same time. Like the US has lasted for so long versus China. It was like 3-6 months max versus a couple of years for the US. So really interesting to kind of keep an eye on that. And I wanted to just show, I'm just going to go to my Hang Seng chart here, because I do think it's important to kind of recognize that, you've been in this period where this chart here, if we zoom out, you can go back all the way, but you topped out on the Hang Seng in 07, and then you double topped in 18. But if we look here, we're so far away from all-time highs in China. And again, you have to wonder, well, what's the kicker here? I mean, China is the fastest growing economy in the world, yet their stock market is in the dumps compared to the US, which, if we flip over to the SPX, I mean, look at this longer term monthly chart on the S&P, right? And look at the run we've seen. So again, is it their politics? Is it the communist side of things? I mean, I'm sure that all plays into money being wary about their tech crackdown and stuff like that. But again, it's just interesting to see. And then if China starts to weaken, does that signal weakness in the US or globally that we could be seeing? And again, you could look at the European Union. European Union's a mess. I mean, Germany to everywhere else. The US is kind of this one last domino that hasn't fallen. And I don't know if you have any views on the global economy and the domestic, but I'd be curious on that.
Let us know what you think in the comments section below about how the Bitcoin having brought Bitcoin to a new all-time high. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and enable alerts. Thank you for watching.